You are live.
Okay. I'm going to call to order the January 26, 2023 meeting of the Affordable Housing Community Equity Development. First thing on our agenda after the call to order is our roll call. Pat Sheridan.
Got to take myself off mute here.
You're on mute, Pat. Okay, Pat Sheridan. Terry Bond.
Here.
Terry Bond.
Here. Can you hear me?
And yeah, and I'm here. I can hear you, and I'm here, and I know Elijah is not here. We have our two new members who are not yet members, but they are at least appointed. They still have to be sworn in on February 1st.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess I won't call a roll to include them because they're not really members yet. But I would like to, as the next item on our agenda, have each of them introduce themselves to us. And I'll start with Karen.
Okay.
Karen Britton.
Mm-hmm. Again, my name is Karen Britton. I work at the Lighthouse Shelter, and I've had my real estate license for the past 10 years. So housing and affordable housing has been really important to me. So it's pretty cool to get in on this committee to really be part of the sausage making.
If we could only sausage make.
I know.
Which
I know it's
you'll
hard.
find out more about later.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Rich Halverson. Also very excited to be here. I was a past resident of Annapolis, actually attended the academy a long time ago, and served 10 years in the Navy as an intelligence officer and transitioned out into business. I've been leading some firms and currently have a, seeing the impact, the financial impact that military service has on military families, have been spent the last several years focused entirely on how to create kind of a new, better access to homeownership and ways to build equity while renting for military families. So very excited that there's an opportunity to serve the local community here.
Great.
Thank you both. And we look forward to your participation. We have been a rather limited group, having been only 4 of us for the year or so. So we're looking forward to having your participation. And as I understand it, you're going to be sworn in on the 1st of February. Is that correct?
10 a.m. That's right.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All righty. What time did you say?
10
7
a.m. Mm-hmm.
Oh, 10 a.m. Okay.
Oh.
So welcome. Next item on our agenda is approval of our December meeting minutes. I know Kimberly sent them to everybody. So do I approve the minutes as written?
So moved.
Is there a second? I guess I don't know if I can second or not, but I'll
Patrick's
second.
on mute.
Yeah, I was going to say I'd second,
Okay.
but I wasn't at the meeting.
You were, that's okay. You read the minutes.
All right.
Whatever. Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Meeting minutes from the December meeting are approved. And next we get to one of our main features of tonight's agenda, which is update on our workforce housing legislation that we have been working on, notwithstanding some of the rhetoric you've seen in the paper, which we've been working on for about 2 years now. And I've invited Eric Lashinsky to provide that update because he knows the ins and outs of what the council will have to do, what they have done, and what all the different process. If you could unmute yourself and give us an update on where we stand on our workforce housing legislation.
Thanks, Nancy. Welcome to the new members of the commission. Yeah, my name is Eric Lashinsky. I'm the Chief of Comprehensive Planning for the city. I'm in the Planning and Zoning Department with Teresa, who I guess is technically the liaison to this commission. Nancy's right. I mean, it's been quite a ride so far with this legislation. Technically, just for the benefit of the new members, I should say, the legislation has been out for some time. I think it was originally introduced in May, and it's been sort of in the process since then. It got, sort of approved by the Housing and Human Welfare Committee of the City Council. It got approved by the Planning Commission, both with recommendations for, clarification and some amendments. And it was recently at City Council for 2 public hearings. So and it got a lot of input at those hearings from the general public, both for and against. And so it's gotten a lot of press. And so it's not, the process is still sort of moving forward. And the way it works is, basically now that it's been through Planning Commission and it's had its public hearing at City Council, it is in the committees again. So Housing and Human Welfare had a follow-up meeting week and a half ago or so. I think it was on the 17th. And although they did not vote on amendments, to my knowledge, they approved most of the clarifications that staff, this commission, and the committee's own members had drafted in the past, and they're all summarized in the staff report. So that's something we can circulate if the new members don't have it yet. But there was one exception, which is there's an amended, we're still trying to figure out the best way to talk about common open space requirement. But the committee generally approved all the other clarifying amendments and additional amendments with a few tweaks. The next stop is the Rules and City Government Committee of City Council. And I believe that is scheduled for February 3rd. I have to double check the time for that. Does anybody know offhand? Third, from 3 to 5.
I think it's scheduled at 1 o'clock.
1 o'clock. Those are usually 2-hour meetings during the day, the committee meetings. They're in person in the council chambers. So staff plans to be there. That would be a good opportunity for commission members to be there if you're available. The Rules and City Government Committee includes, as all committees do, they include 3 council members. One of the bill's sponsors, Alderman Schindelmeyer, is on that committee. And then the other 2 council members are not sponsors. And so, I don't know exactly the line of discussion that's going to happen, but there is always an opportunity for public testimony at those committee meetings. And so staff will really be there mainly to answer questions and clarify any issues. But there would be an opportunity for commission members to speak on behalf of the legislation. I know many of you have already spoken. And while at the full City Council, there is, generally we don't want people, there's a rule where you're not supposed to testify more than once. You can certainly testify at these committee hearings even if you've already testified at the city council. So that's something to think about. I think something that complicated this legislation recently is that there was a resolution introduced this past Monday at city council by, I don't really know exactly who wrote the legislation, but it has 5 sponsors right now. And I'd say one of the more outspoken opponents of the workforce housing bill is Alderman Savage. And it's mostly because he's been kind of more public about, he's sent out newsletters to his constituents, kind of sharing his opposition. He put together, I assume he was kind of the primary writer of the resolution. And he put together a resolution that would put a stop on any workforce housing legislation until the comprehensive plan is adopted by city council. Now that's something I work on, the comprehensive plan. It's one of my main jobs right now. And it's something that we've been working on for a few years, and it's been very challenging to kind of wrap it up. But, I can't say I'm a big fan of the resolution. I think it's good to see the attention put on the comprehensive plan, but I do find it somewhat discouraging because the resolution kind of flies in the face of a lot of the work that's already been done to create 4020, the workforce housing legislation, which has been put together by a lot of volunteer efforts by this commission. There was an affordable housing task force last year that really started things. And it just seems like that resolution, it's called R-1-23. It just seems like it's sort of taking that process and sort of making a real dramatic turn to something else. And
Eric, could you tell me what that resolution is? I'm sorry, I must have missed that last Monday.
yeah, it's called R-1-23. And, for those, for you and Rich, the resolution is different than an ordinance. So it's basically just council saying, this is our position. They are binding. I mean, it does have some binding aspects to it, but it's not something that goes into the city code. It's just basically stating a position and a kind of a policy decision. And so,
Can I ask real quick 2 questions?
yeah, sure.
Who are the sponsors, and how does this affect the consent decree, which is one of the things that got us moving in the first place?
That's a great point, Terry. Well, just to go through the sponsors are Alderman Savage, Alderman Arnett, Alderwoman O'Neill, Alderwoman Pindell Charles, and Alderwoman Finlayson. And yeah, so I mean, you could say that all those sponsors essentially don't want to support the workforce housing legislation at this point. They all have some concern with it. I think the other aspect, just to answer your question about the consent decree, you're referring to the consent decree from the settlement with the Housing Authority residents that was in 2021, I believe. I don't know. I mean, it does seem to go against that consent decree. I mean, that consent decree had several very specific requirements that the city needed to follow to sort of get back on a path of addressing housing supply for low to moderate income families, producing legislation like 4022 was one of those requirements. So it does seem like it would be challenging, that consent decree. And I don't believe the law office, they did review the resolution. They let it be introduced. So either I suppose their position is that it does not contradict the consent decree, but I have to ask the law office about that. I mean, I haven't done that.
Well,
so I don't.
It's
I
the
did want
timing.
to,
Go ahead, Teresa, I'm
I was
sorry.
going to say, I did want to mention that right now, we're writing the third report for the consent decree. And when they sent me the information to update, that wasn't in what they sent me. So I'm gonna have to go back and find out what's going on.
And who's they? The law office?
The law office, yeah.
Because I guess one of the things I thought was the timeliness this resolution that they've come forward with, given that the Plan 2040 has taken so long to do, and I don't know if there's an end in sight really, Eric, but that's just going to delay this a lot more with something that, was supposed to be urgent and had to be done. I would think that the rules and city government committee should be talking about that.
Yeah, I think it will be a hot topic at that meeting. So that's another good reason to come if you're available.
I hate to be cynical about it all, but and written precisely to stop consideration of workforce housing legislation. It was very clever. It was a very interesting end run around it, but that's what it was for.
Yeah.
And it's good to know that it doesn't have the force of law. It's and it was written, of those 5, only 2 have firmly said they're against the legislation. One we're pretty sure is Ross Arnett, as I said, came up to Pat and me at the hearing and said, we're all in favor of workforce housing. just not, there have to be ways to fix the bill we have. So, and we don't know where Bill Mason is yet. So,
I sort of got the impression that Ross was changing his mind too.
That's
boy, are you optimistic?
Well, but I do think our conversation about the ability to redevelop in some of these large parking lots and these big old shopping centers is something that he was really hot on at the very first meeting. And I think you just need to point out, if you throw this bill out, you throw out that too. So you shouldn't throw out everything. I mean, you should change those things that you want to change. And maybe we won't, and I hate to say this, maybe there's not enough support for trying to be innovative and allow a little higher density. We're not talking about dense development in the existing single family neighborhoods. Maybe that will come the next step, but you can't let this whole thing get thrown out because of this. I hope not.
Yeah, I was really hoping there would be more willingness to amend the legislation, be more collaborative and proactive about it rather than just sort of throwing it out and kicking the can down the road further. I mean, I think one of the aspects of the rhetoric kind of opposing the legislation that's come from Alderman Savage that, I think has been sort of troubling to me is this rhetoric about wanting the legislation to be in line with the comprehensive planning process. But the reality is this is something that was highlighted in the last comprehensive plan in 2009.
Eric, at the hearing, I said, this is implementation. This is implementation of the last comp plan. And you're just going to repeat the same policy again in this comp plan.
That's right.
That's bad planning.
One thing I often have to let people know, and I'm constantly explaining to people what the comp plan is and what it isn't. There are a lot of misconceptions about what the comp plan is. It doesn't really write legislation. It provides goals, it provides some direction, but the legislation is really the council's role, or it's contributed. There's a number of people contribute to it, like this commission, but the comp plan doesn't really write the legislation. It just provides the guidance. And this legislation from the staff perspective is directly addressing past goals and recommendations that were in the comprehensive plan and that are going to be carried forward in the next comprehensive plan. So it just kind of flies in the face of that, I guess,
That's for sure.
So-
Yeah, I
so,
guess that's the update. You
when
know, I
when
don't have
send
much more
out-
to add.
When you send out the most
Say that again?
Okay. When you send out the update of the staff report of where we are now after the Housing and Human Welfare Committee meeting that has all a revised piece of legislation to send out, that would be really helpful, because there are some things that we potentially could do that actually gets at the crux of the issue, which is these single family communities like in Ward 1 and in Eastport, or is that Ward 1? I don't know, whatever the West Annapolis and Eastport, where people seem to be most upset about intruding on their space with affordable housing. It seems to me we can do some very simple limitations in the existing language that should satisfy.
Yeah, I would
those
think so.
concerns.
I think there's a lot of room for compromise
don't,
here.
So they don't think, yeah, there's a lot of room for compromise, a lot of room for changing some of the language so that it shows that there are limitations on what actually gets developed.
Right.
And if I could see the whole thing, I might be able to suggest some of those things and language. I did do that for a living when I worked on the Hill. So I might be able to help with that.
Right.
So that would be really helpful if we could sort of see what it looks like amendments that the committee, the subcommittee, or the committee, I guess it was, approved the other day or a week or so ago. And then we can take it from there.
Right. I think that that the report that Eric did to the Planning Commission has a lot of information.
Yeah, it does.
In that,
It does,
and then
but
Jackie, I've got to go back and look because I think there was like a summary of the original recommendations that we made somewhere I saw. And then Jackie is working with the HHW staff person to summarize everything that
Good.
we talked about. So that would become, of course, that again, it's the Office of Law. So we don't know what's going to happen, you know, in terms of the policy analyst and all that. So, but Jackie's the one that's sort of the keeper of that information. So I'll see what I can do.
Okay, well,
I just,
okay, see what you can do to shake loose.
so I want to just put, I was in West Annapolis today, and I know there's a lot of opposition to, well, not a lot. I'm not gonna say there's a lot, but there have been some strong vocal, one in particular about West Annapolis and you know,
Right.
ruining the neighborhood. But anyway, I drove by and they had taken down another single family home that was used for commercial. I'm thinking that's okay. I mean, West Annapolis has always been a mix of new and old, but a lot of the old is being torn down in the commercial district. And to me, that ruins the character of the area. So I'm just curious why that's okay. I don't know what's going up there. You know, I'm sure it's a bigger, you know, more modern, bigger structure.
Yeah.
Maybe Eric knows. What, do you know what's going up there? Is it an office building? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Which property are you referring to?
Oh, it's, in fact, I think it's it's the only old single family structure left on Annapolis Street. It's next to what used to be a Morgan Gerard.
Oh,
Okay.
Yeah, I think I've seen that.
Not anymore, it's gone.
No, when they were.
Yeah,
well, You're not referring to that. There is a new building that was recently completed on.
Not that one. No.
Okay.
The restaurant and the apartments above. Not that one. And the design of that is very nice. I mean.
No, there's another apartment building that was recently completed, but it's on Giddings.
Oh yeah,
and,
not that one either. No,
okay.
This was a demolition. Now, who knows? Like I talked to you, who knows if plans for new construction are even in, or they just got a demolition permit?
That property, it's on the corner of Giddings and Annapolis.
Not on the corner. It's not on the corner.
It's not on the corner. Oh, it's just inside. So I'm not up on the current plans, unfortunately, but I do know that the owner I think they had a more ambitious plan for that property that they ended up abandoning. And I think they're doing, I didn't realize, I just wasn't up on it. I didn't realize they were going to demolish the existing building. I thought they were going to sort of work with it, but I'm just not up on it.
There's a list of all the projects that are going on in the city on the planning and zoning webpage. And it's under current planning.
So I'll look, but I'm just pointing out that when you talk about a character of a neighborhood, there's characters of the business district too. And I thought that would be important too. And I just, it was, because as an old Annapolitan now, that was always what was so wonderful is the old houses that were used for shops. That made the character. Maybe it's just old enough did it. I don't know, but
Terry, I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, character is a very challenging criteria to sort of pin down and judge. I mean, there's lots of examples of design guidelines that are successful to sort of maintain certain character. But I mean, another example that here we in comprehensive planning have been kind of keeping an eye on is, you look at Eastport, historically, the housing stock included lots of duplexes and triplexes and even quadplexes. And there's a really noticeable pattern of those structures being consolidated in recent years to basically just become single family homes. And today in the majority of Eastport, you can't actually build a duplex or a triplex. I mean, with the accessory dwelling unit ordinance that passed last year, you can in effect do a duplex, but it's just sort of a different way of doing it.
It's two units on one
ironically, it's a little more complicated to do that way, but so you could say that's something that and the same goes for downtown. I mean, historically, apartments were part of the fabric of downtown. Today, you can't really build them. So it's in my view, kind of an unfortunate development over time, but I think I spent a lot of time trying to help people see kind of historically these patterns were there, and it's not crazy. But
I think people just have a skewed version of what workforce housing people look like.
Yeah.
They don't understand all those food and beverage people lived in those little cut up houses in Eastport. And, even especially in human services, I'm like at that teacher, fireman pay, I'm workforce housing. So I think they just have a totally different view of who they are.
Well, I think the fireman who testified was great.
That was very good.
I mean, that was okay, guys, this is what we're talking about,
And even the architect that was up a couple of weeks ago talking about nobody's going to come into your neighborhood and cut your yard in half.
Right.
So that information, it's hard to get out there because, I understand where people are coming from, but
I love how everybody gets up. I'm for affordable housing. I certainly support it, but not this bill. Okay, then what?
Right.
Do something.
Yes.
Yeah.
So timeline, can you give us do we have a timeline on the bill? It's going to go to the committee. When will it come back to the council? Do we have any sense of the timeline?
I think it will not be coming back to it won't be coming to the full council again, probably at least until March. Because I think, it's going to have to go back to the Housing and Human Welfare Committee in February, and it will probably have, I'm guessing you'll probably have a second hearing at the Rules and City Government. If not, well, they're meeting in early February. They're probably going to not meet again until early March. So yeah, it probably won't come back to the full city council until sometime in March at the earliest.
So is it possible to find some of the alder people to sit down and talk, like get little working group, that consensus that Alderman Savage talks about? I don't think you get that by,
Right.
saying, oh, wait, let's do the 2040 plan, in 6 months to a year. We have a bill before us. How can we get the most out of it that will work for everybody? I mean, do we ever have working groups like that in the city of, alder people and staff getting together?
Yeah, I mean,
to work out the differences?
the other people should make themselves, I mean, it's their job to be available to constituents. And I think you're entitled to try to have that meeting,
So it's through the constituents asking for it.
Yeah, that's often how it happens. But a lot of the council members are very engaged. They're all engaged with their constituents, and if there's, they all tend to, show up at civic association meetings and, try to keep in touch with their constituents. And so, but I don't, I think to the degree you want to have more of that dialogue, I would encourage you to do that. I mean, and perhaps as a, group of commission members, I mean, there's nothing wrong in trying to have meetings with, I think Elijah was already trying to set.
Yeah, Elijah and I are going to
meetings
try and
up.
meet with Karma because she's my rep. And we talked about some others too. And as my next door neighbor spoke in favor of it, so I was hoping he would come there too. So, I mean, maybe we can have them hear the other side because it appears that they are listening to constituents that are negative about the bill. And some may not even know what's really in it. That's the part that's sort of distressing a bit.
Yeah,
Staff did meet with Alderwoman O'Neill.
we did. Yeah,
Oh, okay.
we did.
And
So,
we already met with her.
After that she supported that last resolution?
it was before that actually.
Okay.
But we kind of left that meeting understanding her perspective better, and that she really wasn't. We talked about some things that some changes that could be made to sort of make it more palatable, and it just seemed like it was going to be challenging. I think, yeah.
That AMI percentage is pretty high in this
It is.
bill.
And that's really the national standard. I mean, the bill
Yeah,
as written is that the maximum income is 100% of the area median income,
yeah.
but there was a recommendation to go to 120%, which is actually more of the national standard for kind of workforce families. So
Yeah.
and particularly here, because almost anything you build or rehab, you can't afford, you have to have at least the 120% of
Oh
area.
God, yeah. And you just hate to see it. It's such a battle now for this percentage. Like, what do we do for the
Right.
30 to 50%?
right.
I mean, that's tough.
I was struck by the testimony that happened a couple weeks ago from the Board of Education Chair, Joanna Tobin, who I think it was her who said the starting salary of Anne Arundel County public school teacher is like $55,000, and that is, well, I guess a single two income household, 100% of the area median income is about $100,000. So I guess that would be in line with that. If it's two incomes, but.
Right. Yeah, and I also thought it was interesting the way, I'm so sorry, I have one more thing. The way it represented like the AMI is like families of four, like I didn't see it for like single parents or single people. So I don't know where they fall into that as well.
Well, currently we have several moderately priced dwelling units for sale out at Parkside Preserve. And the top income is at 100% of median. And so those are 4 bedrooms. So they're sort of, would go to a family of 4, and they're at $312,000. 4-bedroom townhouse. We have 6. We haven't sold them all yet.
Wow.
Do you have interest
I
in?
think we've sold 3. I mean, we've done all kinds of outreach and, stuff. So it'll be interesting if we can get all 6.
So you don't even have any additional applicants at this point?
Well, we do. It's just that, getting them through the application process.
Yeah.
They've got to have a significant, they have to have down payment. They have to have good credit. This isn't a subsidy type program. You got to be able to, just like anybody else. And we're having a hard time getting those folks so that they could qualify for a mortgage. But Denise is working very hard. Where's Denise? Denise has
Got her
got
hand up. She's got her hand up.
I don't know, how many we have sold now, Denise?
Well, I was piggybacking on Teresa as far as the one of the things I would like to comment on is the majority of the families that we're processing, the income is just too low to begin with. And I was trying to send Rich over there a little email because he's in the military. Maybe he can find us some military families. I wanted to connect with him after he realized, and he joined the committee, that thought came across. I was trying to send you an email, but I guess Zoom doesn't let you do it like Teams does. So I was trying to shoot you a message.
Oh, in the chat, there's a chat thing. I think we
I
have.
seen the chat. I was messing around over there,
Yeah,
looking at it.
Chat is disabled for public meetings.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay. Sorry with that, Mark. Wasn't trying to go against the rules. But anyway, in what I'm getting as we process the applications is people that want to make the step, but they just can't qualify for a loan at $312,000. And so the only resource they have for down payment assistance is ACDS, and they have a requirement. You have to do the class, and then the Maryland Mortgage Program, but don't know the specifics of what they can get from that program. And so that's why we're having a difficult time. So we have one that is actually totally sold. The other ones, they haven't really gotten through the financing piece yet, and people would like to have them. It's just getting the right qualified people, and then also being inclusive of all, diverse backgrounds, so that we are following fair housing laws and ensuring that everybody gets an equal opportunity to live there. So it's been quite a struggle. Hopefully we'll get there. Fortunately, they're not built and sitting, so we're still moving forward. So I just want to say that I got a chance to say something about something I really know about. Yeah. Let me stop. I'm just kidding.
So.
Okay. So I guess the next thing for us is February 3rd. I know I can't be at the Rules Committee meeting, and Terry, I knew you couldn't.
I can.
Oh, good.
Oh, good. And okay, that would be great if only.
And I'll be there because I have to be there
You'll
for
be there. Oh,
another reason, so I'll be there.
Okay, good. And Karen, if we can, maybe we can talk outside of this meeting, and we can sort of help prep you to be able to to answer some questions or whatever about the legislation itself on behalf of the commission at that point, because you should be a member by that point.
Yes, I will be.
It's the 3rd.
It would be good to share with you our testimony for the different hearings, because there's a lot of points we make, so you can be aware of those. And also the couple of touchy points that one alder person keeps bringing it up. And so you might want to have the correct information on that one in case it comes up.
I did a download of all the comments.
Oh, good for you.
Okay, good.
So I have like spreadsheet with all the comments that everybody made and
That's
what
great.
ward they're in, and
Okay.
so I
Oh,
can
that'd be
send
good.
that to you. Do you guys want it too?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
I'll send it to the whole committee then.
Good, good. Okay.
Jackie and I and Eric had gone, we went through them to try to see what the themes were in terms of what people were
Right.
against and what they were
mean,
for.
The big problem is nobody wants, quote, dense housing in a single family neighborhood. I mean, that's sort of, you can boil it all down to that.
Except that we're dense. That we're dense is a
I
misnomer.
know.
Yeah, yeah.
Don't
I know.
confuse
Maybe
people with
Maybe
that.
you can do that, Karen. You can show them, Karen. You can explain density to them. They don't get it.
I got it.
Well, I think there is a lot of, I have to say, I mean, I feel like there's a lot of implicit bias towards apartments and renters going on, and
Yeah.
Does
I
seem
think
to be.
that I wish we could unpack that a little bit more, because it's not really getting talked about, but I feel like that's sort of, what's going on here. And
Yeah.
no,
We talked about the single family neighborhood piece. We can make that be required to be home ownership. And we can also, in fact, that's what it's all about, really, is home ownership for the single
That's
family.
what we're real. Yeah.
Yeah.
And for some reason, people have focused on the fact that you can do multifamily rental housing and saying that that's our purpose. And that is not our purpose.
Yeah.
So, we have to, so we continue to have our work cut out for us. We know we have 4 votes. We need 5. We think there may be a way to get a couple more. There may be, there's probably no way we get a couple. So, we'll have to go from there.
Yeah.
So,
Did staff meet with any other alderpersons or just O'Neill?
just Alderwoman O'Neill.
okay.
We did, I sent a message, I messaged Alderwoman Finlayson a couple times, but I haven't heard back yet.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
What is their understanding of what workforce housing is?
Don't even ask.
Don't ask. You don't have an answer coming to you at this moment.
Yeah.
It's not at all clear that they understand or want to understand. So
Right.
Okay, I
we
I
can go
understand
from
now.
there.
I understand.
I think they see it. I think it's still code for multifamily rental housing to many of the members. So,
But I mean, that's everywhere. I think the problem is they think it's low income
Right.
multifamily
Right.
housing. And every
Right.
time I want to get up and
Right.
speak at the meetings, I don't want to speak as a representative of the Lighthouse because I don't want people to go, oh, well, this
She
is
works for
Homeless
this is what's
shelter.
going on,
Yeah.
and of
Right.
course it is.
Right.
That's what my goal is, but that's not the only goal.
I mean, I
Well, if you had more affordable housing, you have less homeless people. That's for one sure.
Absolutely. As people move up, if the people in Section 8 are stuck,
Right.
because there's nothing
Nothing.
for them to move to.
No,
Right.
what,
This is
25,000
the
people on the
step
waiting
for
list?
them to move to. This is the
Yeah.
step
Yeah.
to move
So-
from
Right. And
one
if they can
environment
move up,
to another.
then
And
some of those people that are in public housing can then move up to Section 8, which leaves them more of the.
Yeah, I brought that up in my testimony at the council meeting about the family self-sufficiency program at HACA.
Right.
How this is a natural
Right.
progression for that.
Yeah.
But
And maybe
Denise, I don't know, were you with me at the HACA board meeting when we were talking with Ross Arnett about kind of the difference between the single family workforce and the multifamily, and how the tax credit program needs the workforce to be able to do the 60 to 80%? Not sure if, I can't remember who else was talking with me.
We sort of had that conversation at the council meeting also.
Yeah,
You sort of, I think that was a continuation of that conversation.
it could be.
You and I were talking
It's,
to him before the meeting.
it sort of seems like he's coming around somewhat when he starts to
Well, I think he-
understand the difference.
And that's why I think a couple of things that if we put some limitations on what can be built in these quote unquote traditional single family communities.
Mhm.
Like
if we do
Arlington.
That might,
Yeah, that was a good example.
that might help him move all the way. I mean, nobody wants that implicit bias that you're talking about, Eric, and other concerns that people have.
Yeah.
No one
So-
wants to admit it openly. So, and I don't, and they may not even know that's what
Right,
they're
exactly.
expressing. They don't know what's being expressed. So I think
Right.
if there are ways to address that without smashing the entire intent of the legislation, we may get a couple of other.
Would it be
council.
helpful to limit the number of these multiple units in the neighborhoods? Like say this section, you're only gonna put 2, which might house 4 families. I'm just, would
Yeah,
that put
yeah. I
them in
mean,
a-
Yeah.
there are ways
Yeah.
to get at.
because
yes.
they may feel as though they're gonna be encroached upon by all of these
Right.
people.
And that's
Not-
exactly what they've said.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
not the person that works at the CVS and her husband and their child. It's
Yeah.
this, they're seeing it from a different lens.
Mhm.
Right.
They're not seeing the reality of who the workforce housing people are. And it's their own family members in some cases.
Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
stigma just seems to have jumped on the back of, oh, these are public housing residents and they already carry their own stigma. So is there
Yeah.
any way of convincing our
Well, there's-
legislatures that these are our family and our friends and their kids that are just coming into the workforce and need a place? Is there any way that we can
Right.
convince them that this is what this is about? I mean,
Yeah.
I
they
wish
did-
there were, but I mean, like
Yeah.
Teresa mentioned that, we have spent time, looking at all the testimony, and Teresa did a great job of organizing it so we can kind of understand all the things that were said. And there were quite a few testimonies from people in those sort of workforce profession, I don't want to say work for, some of the professions that are most often identified as kind of these workforce families that
working
can't
The
people.
service professions, a lot of the
service,
service.
the teachers
Yeah.
union,
Yeah.
the
they're
firefighters.
just working family, they're just working
yeah.
people that live in.
Yeah.
neighborhoods that
So like
live
there really
there.
shouldn't be any
restaurant town.
doubt on the city council who
Right.
this is trying to help. But I can't really speak for the average homeowner in the city. I mean,
Right.
there's still probably that,
We did, but did we get that much testimony against it from the average homeowner?
No.
We
No,
didn't.
It was,
You know, most of the
18 to
testimony was
6.
from most of the testimony was from Rob's ward against.
Yeah. But it was almost triple 4. So I was really surprised to see that.
Yeah, the second public hearing, there were more people that were supportive. It was the first
Yeah.
first public hearing that most of Rob's ward came out against.
And a number of them stated up front they hadn't even read the legislation.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
So like maybe if we could take away their reasons, I think a lot of people think the traffic's going to be bad, and it could be bad, but the people are already here with their cars because they have to drive here to work and then go home. So if they lived here, maybe they would more have access
Yeah.
to public transportation, things like that, and then maybe there wouldn't be so many cars on the road. They're already
Right.
driving, living
And
here
all
or not.
those arguments, we've made all those arguments. It's just try to get the legislation to a point where we can get the aldermen to vote for it.
Yeah.
Put up whatever if there's maybe more
I'm-
guardrails that we can put in there without diluting, what it is, that would make them more comfortable.
So at this point, I think we're at where we know we have 4 votes. We need 5. Let's not try to change the world. Let's not try to change everything so that we can get all the votes, because we're not
Right.
going to get them.
No, we just need the one.
yeah,
Right.
we're constantly in our department. We constantly say, don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good.
Right.
Yeah.
There's plenty of room to compromise here, and I think the concerns are clear, and I think we have batted around some ideas for amendments, but we want some council members to be open to that. You know, it doesn't seem like for some reason they're just not willing to work with it. And it's frustrating, but
Yeah. Okay.
Hmm,
I think we probably have exhausted this topic at the
Yeah.
moment.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
thank you, Eric, very much for
You bet.
bringing us up to date.
Thanks, Eric.
And move on.
Sure.
We will move on to our next item, which is an update on the CDBG program. Teresa.
All righty. Just for the new members, my name is Teresa Wellman. I am the liaison to this commission, but also I'm the chief of community development for the city of Annapolis. And Denise and I work together and we oversee the community development block grant program, which is what I'm going to talk about now. But we also oversee the moderately priced dwelling unit program, community legacy program, and a number of other different programs. So what I probably will do is email you like an overview of what the division does, because most of what you'll be doing actually comes through our division. And just real quickly, if you guys wouldn't mind, Pat and Nancy and Terry, just real quickly, just telling the new commissioners something about yourselves, so everybody knows what everybody's up to.
Oh, I'm retired. I'm Nancy Libson. I'm the chair. I'm the reluctant chair because I'm retired. So I am the reluctant chair of the commission, and I've spent more than 40 years in the affordable housing business, all aspects of it: technical assistance, training, development, legislation, advocacy, you name it, I've done it in the affordable housing business. And so that's sort of my bent on the commission. I also did work for a couple of years, no, maybe a year, here in Annapolis at ACDS, which you may or may not know what that is, but I worked at ACDS, which is the CDBG agency for the county. I've known Teresa a long time, but so my interest has always been affordable housing, from public housing on up. And that's where I come from. That's my background. Pat, you want to go next?
Okay. Yeah, I know it's kind of a long career too, like yours. And, Nancy and I actually worked together, well, not in the same place, but worked together on issues a number of times back in Washington. But I've been involved in affordable housing about 47 years or so, 23 years with the federal government. When I left there, I was the assistant deputy administrator for multifamily housing for the rural development programs. A couple of years with Maryland CDA, where I was the director of housing management there back in the early 90s. And then just before I retired, for 17 years, I was at Volunteers of America, which is a national nonprofit that we had affordable housing projects, about 20,000 units in 42 states and Puerto Rico. And I kind of managed that program. So since I've been retired, I've been on this commission, also on the Housing Authorities Commission, and also on the board of Homes for America.
So I guess it's my turn now. I'm Terry Bond. I live in Homewood. I've lived in Annapolis since the late 70s. I came back east to get a graduate degree at GW, but my first job was with Anne Arundel County, and I kind of stayed. I love Annapolis. I'm a planner, and I worked for Anne Arundel, and then I worked for Prince George's County for the Maryland National Capital Park and Planning Commission. I am too retired, like Nancy. But I did just about everything in planning. I did subdivision, zoning, not too much zoning, community planning, worked on comp plan, and also did revitalization planning, which was something new. And we actually worked on implementation. So I know a little bit about a lot of things, I guess the bottom line is. And I've been with the Housing Commission over almost 20 years, I guess now. I emailed Teresa when my daughter was at Bates and said there's got to be a better way about these housing development, because just getting to learn about the different programs. She said, we need you on the committee, and I've stayed. And it's exciting now because we're actually doing something, and that's
I
why
know.
it's really nice to be on it and be part of what the city's doing, and I hope we can make this work.
Cool. And Denise? Denise is staff person. In our
I'm sorry,
Office
I
of
was
Community
muted.
Development. I said, would you like to just quickly tell us a little bit about, tell the new members about yourself?
My name is Denise Ruffin. I've spent a career of over 40 years from property management. All my career has been in affordable housing. I've done actual boots on the ground property management. I've worked with the state of Maryland as an asset manager, overseeing the physical and financial conditions and the sustainability of the properties. And then I moved on to some areas and arenas of development. And God, I could show you some beautiful two-story houses that would fit right in these lovely neighborhoods of Annapolis by one of my favorite architectural friends that I met in the business. And you can build them and they fit right in. And I really enjoy working for the city of Annapolis and with Teresa and getting to meet all of the people that I'm meeting over the year.
I'm very happy to have her.
Denise, share those images, because we might be able to use them in the future for some of the work.
Oh yeah, this company that I work for, they actually took a lot of old houses and actually made them, I'm gonna call, into workforce housing, into neighborhoods. Historical, but the renovations on them is just amazing. And you know, I've always lived in a neighborhood where we had houses with two units, so it's no big deal for me. And we fit into neighborhoods with single family homes, and we all survive well. And so I'd really love to see this work, because I know how it works in the community. Thank you, Teresa, for letting me really put myself out there on TV or YouTube.
Absolutely.
I'm kind of shy about those things.
So Mark, can you post that CDBG spreadsheet? So the Community Development Block Grant Program is a program for those of you that are new. It's an entitlement program. Every year we get about $306,000 from HUD to spend on housing and community development projects. This year, Mark, can you move it up so we can see? Yeah, a little further. You can just keep going up there. So we can see the projects. So this year we had 12 applications from our usual friends that apply. But out of those two, one from Co-op Anne Arundel was withdrawn. They asked for more money than we actually have. So they withdrew their project. And then the Brewer Hill Cemetery project wasn't eligible and it came in late. So those two won't be included. But everybody else that that applied last year, with the exception of Homes for America, has put in an application. And for some reason, Ola didn't put in an application this year. So we're not expecting any program income this year like we had last year. So we'll probably have our $306,000. We'll only be able to, you can see under public services that people requested $145,000. We only have $45,000 available because we're constrained by a 15% cap on public service projects. On the capital projects, we're in a little bit better shape because the rest of the money has to go for capital projects. Community Development Block Grant is more of a bricks and mortar type program. And then we have some funds we're going to set aside for administration and doing fair housing. So we had a total request of $424,000 and we'll have $306,000 to spend. So in February, I'll be going through these and making recommendations, and probably will be bringing them back to the committee either in February or March. Does anybody have any questions?
Yeah, I was just curious, administration fair housing, what might or would that cover?
That covers administration and fair housing covers. We're in a contract with Baltimore Metropolitan Council to do all our fair housing activities. So we have a contract with them. And then it covers our administrative costs, like salaries and, all of that.
Sure.
Well, it doesn't actually cover them. It just covers
I was like,
a
wow.
small part of them. And sometimes what we can do is like if at the end of the year, we're doing okay budget wise, sometimes we can move that money up into the capital projects, but we can't move it up into public service. That's a statute. 15% is a statutory cap, period. So,
Okay. Thank you.
any other questions? Okay, I'm done.
Okey doke.
Thank you.
And that leads us to our last item on our agenda, which is new business. And I put that down there mainly because I thought we should, at least in this first meeting of the year, start focusing a bit on what we want to do this year, even though we haven't finished with our old business, which is the workforce housing legislation. I think we ought to think a little bit about what are some of the things we might want to tackle this coming year. And Teresa earlier today sent us our duties of the commission. And it covers, essentially, we do a lot. We should be doing a lot. As you might have heard from, gathered from what Terry's response was to our last discussion about workforce housing, and her discussion of her participation in the commission, we haven't really tackled too much other than perhaps approving CDBG programs for the last umpteen years. And at this time, in this foray into working on and approving legislation and trying to get legislation approved is a first big step. But there are other things that we're supposed to be doing, and that's advising the council about policy that the city ought to take, and fair housing issues, and kind of be the expansion of Teresa's office in some ways, is helping her make the housing and community development agenda more important and valuable to the city and to the council and to the mayor. So those are all the kinds of things we ought to be doing in terms of our activities as a commission. So with that in mind, I'm wondering if any of you has any ideas about what kinds of things we might want to tackle this upcoming year, in addition to trying to get our workforce housing legislation actually passed.
Sure, if that isn't difficult enough, why don't we take on the certificate of adequate public facilities?
Hi.
Okay,
Oh,
I have an idea. I actually did this for Prince George's. Guess what? Number of policemen is not a facility. Police don't have
That's
facilities
true.
for district stations. It's service. So they should not be doing, in fact, the police department, the police, whatever, the big administration says, don't use that because it's a misnomer, because it's not a facility.
Well, one of the things that,
Yeah.
and Denise was at the HACA meeting, but the Blum project, which is supposed to go to closing in March, doesn't have its certificate yet. And yet it's just a one-for-one replacement. There's not actually any increase in housing units. but it's stuck right now because it doesn't have its certificate. So, I mean, part of what I, because Alderman Gay and Arnett were both at the meeting, I put forth that there ought to be a waiver for projects that don't increase the number of units. Or
At
house-
least.
Well, there
at a
you go.
minimum.
You
But
can make
as
a
I'm-
recommendation to the city council.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, this is the kind of thing that we might be able to tackle, is really taking a look at that. Because at that public facilities, whatever it's called, what's it called? Adequate public facilities?
adequate
Yeah.
public facilities, yeah.
And
Yeah,
I think the law office is actually taking a look at it
I hope
Okay.
so.
so,
right now.
so that may be something we want to all, at our next meeting, we may want to take a look at that and see what kinds of ideas we can offer to them. That would fit perfectly within our role as advising the city on policies and policies that they ought to take so that we can advance affordable housing in the city.
Mhm.
I mean, because right now it appears as though all the affordable housing projects are going to be stopped, dead cold.
Yep, the Willows
Um,
project.
Willows is, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And fortunately, because most of what we're thinking of in terms of workforce housing, if we were to ever to pass this law, they're all under 11 units. So most of what's going to be done is going to be under 11 units, so that won't have to meet those standards. But
Some of it might be.
anything
over.
larger than that would
Yeah.
have to meet those standards. So, Pat, that's a great idea. Okay, so that's one thing.
Mhm.
Anything else that we might think about?
Teresa, what's priority to you, Teresa?
Yeah, I was going to ask, I warned her earlier today that we would call on her to see what kinds of things she would like our help with, and
Well,
what
one of the-
ideas she would like us to work on for the
Well,
city.
One of the things is, HUD's putting more emphasis on fair housing again. So the Biden administration is kind of going back to where the Obama administration was and getting a lot stricter about fair housing. And in our last impediments, our last three impediments, analysis of impediments to fair housing, which we have to do now every 5 years, we've always had the same impediments, and they're all in the zoning code. And it has to do with definition of family. Let me just read quickly the one that's the analysis from 2006. Zoning ordinance definition of family is narrow, limiting it to person related by blood, marriage, or adoption. So we did try to get that. We tried to fix that. We tried to just not have a definition of family, and that didn't pass. So, but that's something that we really need to look at. There's limits, it limits location of group homes for persons with disabilities, different things like that. So it says use is regulated by a special exception requiring additional notice and public hearing that draw unwarranted attention to the use. So there's all those little things in our code that kind of violate
Fair housing.
fair housing. So
So
then,
what would be helpful to us then, if you would like us to take a look at that,
right.
is for you to put together a list of them. They're already.
Well, I already
currently
have
in
that.
Yeah, okay. If
So
you could
because-
forward it to all of us.
Yeah, because in the last, in the very last AI that we did, which was in 2015, we said that that again, we would change, we would overhaul the zoning code. And I'll send you this. This is all the things that we said we were going to do.
The
in terms
AI,
of-
okay.
Mm.
And I think you might have this, but I'll send it again.
Yeah, I'm sure we have it. I'm sure I have it, but. it'd be
Yeah,
good
this
for you.
probably looks familiar.
So, but let me ask a question. What about best practices for zoning in terms of those three situations? There's got to be things that other jurisdictions that have done to address that.
They have.
So do we have that information?
We can, first of all, look at Anne Arundel County, which doesn't have a definition for family.
Okay.
Yeah, there's tons of stuff available, and I can look it all up.
You can give us direction and we, I can do some research too, Teresa, if that would help.
Right. Here it is. We said overall, the revise the city zoning code to affirmatively further fair housing, improve cities regulations, the group home thing again. I mean, it's the same thing over and over again because we never did it.
Yeah,
So I will send you copies of all of this, which shows what it says, and then we can start looking for things, ways to fix the zoning code. So that would be a good fair housing activity.
okay, so we now have adequate public facilities, definition of, impediments to fair housing, revision of the zoning code. One of the things I think, Teresa, you had mentioned to me a little bit ago was take a look at land trusts. And I
Yeah,
know
well, the
we've
whole
talked
notion,
about that in the past.
yeah, I mean, the whole notion of land trusts, I'm getting conflicting information about whether it would work for us, especially with the Hackery development, and whether or not we're big enough to actually have an organization like that, if we even have enough land to even make it worth doing
Right.
something like that. So I think you should, and I think that would support Choice Neighborhoods and
I
Hacka's.
think it would, and I think it also fits within one of the findings from the Affordable Housing Task Force report.
Right.
Wants to take a look at land trusts. And then one other item that I think we can consider again, or should consider, is Spa Road. And that piece of property, although somewhere in the back of my mind, I recall hearing about Spa Road the other, within the past few weeks, and I don't remember why.
It was on the city council. Rob
We have a
Salha.
resolution that says that the city council wants to dedicate that property for affordable housing.
Okay, we do have one. All right.
Yeah,
But,
that
but
was a
Rob,
resolution.
but Rob also was talking about the fact that it probably is contaminated and they
Right.
need-
So it's gonna need some sort of evaluation to see how much it would cost to get it rehabilitated or
Yeah.
uncontaminated, so.
Uncon-
There's all kinds of plans for that property already because of Eastport Terrace Harbor House redevelopment and the need to increase the size of that by about double to qualify for RAD. So you don't have to do it on the site. You can do it in other places within the city. So one of the concepts is, well, let's use Spa Road site to take some of that
Right.
density.
Ah,
Yeah, so you can look at that.
Yeah.
okay, all right. So
That ought to
I
keep you
think
busy
that's a
for
lot
a while.
of things to try to tackle. And, sort of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
and-
Karen.
Caroline,
I just thought maybe like we could work into Wes Moore's or Governor Moore's year of service idea in Winston-Salem, because we were having a really hard housing shortage when COVID hit. We worked with volunteers to renovate housing. We had a contractor that walked everybody through the steps, but it saved, I think we renovated 30 units for $30,000 and we bought everybody lunch every day.
We
And
have a
it-
program like that we haven't started up yet, but
Okay.
rebuilding together. we
Yeah.
gave rebuilding together money.
Okay.
So unfortunately, they lost their executive director a few months back, so they're starting to gear up again, but we do have two programs. We have a housing rehabilitation program, which is more of a, major rehabilitation. And then we have the rebuilding together, which is for repairs for under $10,000. And that's done with volunteers. Although
Are these homeowners or
It
apartments?
used to be Christmas in
April,
April.
right.
That's
They
what
do
Rebuilding
homeowners.
Together is.
Oh, I'm
Yeah.
talking like communities, or if we found hotels that had closed down or any properties like that where we could bring people in to renovate units and create housing. I think could go along with the year of service. or anything to create housing.
Create
Well,
or
look-
preserve and strengthen?
Well, I mean, if you have, like, say we had this community we started in and they had 50 units that were down and they've been down for 10, 15 years.
Yeah, okay.
So we went in and renovated the units. The owner paid for the supplies. We brought in volunteers and renovated the space.
So there was
brought
no
community
change of
members
ownership or
in.
anything like that.
Nope, brought in community members and the people we moved in helped work on their neighbors' apartments. So it created this really awesome sense of community in that community. So,
And
Yeah,
we have, well, boarding houses are illegal in Annapolis. Zoning, in the zoning code. That's one thing that we can't do here, but that would be a good, thing to put on the list. Typically, we don't have properties like that.
yeah. I've noticed that
Annapolis is-
here.
People gobble up everything here, so there's hardly anything vacant anywhere.
Mhm.
So,
Except I'm thinking there's probably a lot of apartments that are substandard. They may
Mhm.
not be vacant, but they're not really.
Oh,
lived.
yeah.
right, and
And
those would be the
that's the
ones that
issue.
don't have licenses that we don't know
Probably.
about, or, some of the stuff that's licensed, but not subsidized housing where there's more, stricter rules,
Right.
like apartment complexes.
And a lot of them have issues turning units because they just don't have the manpower and funding, like this place got in a hole over, decades because they didn't have, I don't know, they struggled. So they, robbed Peter to pay Paul. So like we go into one unit, it was missing all the parts. They probably used to fix another unit.
Well, we can explore that. That's part of the, what this organization is tasked with, and that's rehabilitation of property.
Mm.
Okay, well, so I think we've got a whole raft of
I
things
think
that we
you're
can-
gonna be busy for a
yeah,
Yeah.
we're gonna be busy for a while.
I just personally want to stay away from the zoning ordinance just for a little while. 'cause
Yeah, no, you can put that on the back burner. We can go in since the fair housing stuff is kind of hot on the, we're getting a lot of emails about that. If you want to start
Mhm.
with that one first, that's fine. Whatever,
Okay,
it's up to you guys.
anything else?
No,
Alrighty.
just welcome to the new folks.
Yes, welcome to the new folks.
And-
And
Do they need,
thank
do they
you,
need some,
thank you all very much.
do they need some, do you guys, would you want some of the background information like the task force report, some of that stuff? I don't know, if Teresa, once they get like,
I was planning, I have a list of things that I was
Good.
planning on sending them, like the task force report. I was gonna send
Oh,
them the
good.
staff report for the planning commission.
wait,
I was gonna send them all the comments from the, and then I was gonna send them information on our office and what we do. I think
Great.
that ought to be enough for
That
now.
ought to be enough
A
reading
lot of
for them.
Enough homework for now. Okay.
Do you want me to send them all the meeting minutes from the list? Okay.
No, that probably would not be.
Is there anything you guys would like to have that I didn't mention?
Karen, Rich,
I don't know
Can't hear
about
you, Rich.
Oh, yeah, you're muted.
okay. Well, I think
Uh-oh.
that brings us to our logical conclusion. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So move.
I'll second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? So the meeting of January 23rd of the, whatever, Affordable
25th.
Housing. yeah,
26th.
Affordable Housing
26th.
Economic Development Commission is now adjourned.
Right. And please feel free